Hello and welcome to Matrix Tutorials. Last week we touched a little on basic moderation and how you can keep your community safe. We explored the concept of power level, state event and ACLs, and we saw that most things happen at the room level. Today we're going to deploy Mjolnir, the security guard for your community that makes moderation much easier. We're going to base our tutorial on Matrix tutorial number 1, where we had deployed Synapse using Docker Compose. Here, we're just going to add a container for Mjolnir and set it up. But first, let's get back to the problem we're actually solving. So I have set up space for my community and I have 3 rooms in it. That evil Tib is joining and being mean. We can see him in books saying that books are just fancy toilet paper, in random saying that this room should be predictable, and in general that the room should be called caporal and not general. So that person is mean and we want to ban them. So we can click on their avatar and remove from room or ban from room. So this just happens at the room level. I can go to my space, to the home view of my space, and I can see actually they are not a member of the space. So it's tedious enough for 3 rooms to manually go through the rooms and ban them from each one of them, but it's even worse for larger communities. It can get even more annoying than that. What if somebody creates a home server for the sole purpose of creating unlimited new users just to raid my channels? I need to update the ACLs to ban the whole domain instead of doing it per user. But as we have seen last week, on Element at least, I need to rely on developer tools and I need to find it for every single room, and it's not something you can really rely on when you are being raided. So fortunately, there is a bot called Mjolnir that you can post in every room of your community that you can control from a single control room, and that will make the changes for you in all the rooms it has been deployed to. Let's get started. So we're just going to follow the instructions on the Mjolnir repository. To find that, you can go to your search engine of choice and type Mjolnir Matrix GitHub. That should be enough to land on Mjolnir, the repository of Mjolnir, which is also the source of documentation. So we are going to scroll down and go to the setup documentation, and it contains everything we need. We are going to follow what's happening in installation. So create an account for Mjolnir, install Mjolnir, configure Mjolnir, and start Mjolnir. The first thing we're going to do is create a user for Mjolnir. So I'm going to go to my terminal. I'm on my home server. If I do a docker ps, I can see that I have Synapse that is running, and I'm going to do docker exec it, and my Synapse container name is infra synapse 1. I'm going to run bin bash to get a terminal. So now I'm within the Synapse container and I'm going to run the command to register a new user. That command is register new matrix user -c with the path to the configuration of my Synapse, and then HTTP without an S because we are calling within the container localhost port 8008, which is the default one. So I can create my new user. I'm going to call that user moderation. So this is the user I'm creating for Mjolnir. Moderation, I'm going to give it a password. You can make that password fairly complex because we are not going to use it afterwards. We're going to use the access token. We don't want that user to be admin. So Mjolnir is already going to have a user that has a lot of privileges. We want to limit as much as possible the amount of privileges it has, just in case somebody gets access to the account. So we are not going to make it administrator, and the user is going to be created. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open in a private browser a new window, and I'm going to go to, for example, staging.element.io, or you can just go to element.io. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in with that user. So on my own home server, in my case, it's chipchop.org. I had called that user moderation. And I can log in with the password I had set up. I don't want anything that is offered to me. And I'm going to go to settings, all settings, help and about, scroll down and get to the access token. So I'm going to copy that access token and keep it somewhere safe. Now, it's very important. You need to just close that window and you do not sign out. You need absolutely not to sign out, because if you do that, it's going to invalidate the access token that you have just retrieved. So I can just close the window and forget about it. With my other user, so with my space administrator user, I'm going to create a new room and I'm going to call it moderation room. I'm going to make that room private, and for the sake of simplicity here, I'm going to disable end-to-end encryption. There is a way to make Mjolnir support end-to-end encryption, but out of the box it doesn't. So let's switch that off for now, and we can still toggle it on later. I'm going to create that room and I'm going to give it an address. So I was a bit fast. I'm going to room information, room settings, scroll down in general, and I'm going to create a local address, which I'm going to call moderation on chipchop.org. And that's the canonical alias for that room. Okay, we're good. Now, back to the documentation, I can deploy the container. So I can scroll in the documentation and see I have Docker link for the Docker specific deployment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down. There's a little bit of text. I advise you to read it. I already read it, so I know what are the pitfalls here. What I'm interested in is the Docker Compose section. So I'm going to copy and paste everything below services because I already have services. Let's get to my terminal and I can go to I can go to the folder. Oh, I'm within the Synapse container. That's why it doesn't work. So I go to the infra directory where I have my Docker Compose file. And I can see if I scroll to the top, I already have a services section. So this is why I'm just copying below services. Right. So I scroll to the bottom and I'm going to just paste the Mjolnir section here. There we go. Properly aligned. So I have Mjolnir that is going to be based on the Mjolnir image with the latest tag. I want it to restart unless it's stopped, and I'm just going to amend the volume section. So I don't want it to be a local directory. I'm just going to call it, to make it in a volume. So I'm going to call the volume Mjolnir data, and it's going to mount the data directory inside of it. And I need not to forget to add it here. It's called Mjolnir data, and that's it. So I can give it a go and do docker compose up-d, and we are going to see that Mjolnir is going to keep crashing. So first of all, Docker needs to retrieve the image before it creates the container, and it's going to crash actually because we have not done one important thing. We have not created the sample file documentation. So Mjolnir is not able to create it for us at the moment. Actually, that should be solved, but that's another matter. I'm going to go to the sample file documentation, and I see I need to create it in the config production YAML file. So I'm going to go to that page. I'm going to take the raw document, copy the URL, and then I can get back to my terminal. I go to var lib docker volumes. So we can list all the volumes here. As always, I was in the directory called infra, so all my volumes are going to be prefixed with infra. So I can go to infra Mjolnir data underscore data, and I can see I need to create a config directory, and inside that config directory, I need to retrieve the YAML file. So I have it called default.yaml, which I'm going to remove, to rename instead production.yaml. No, actually I want it to be called YAML, not YAMLk production. There we go. So I can open it. What do I see at the very top? I can see the home server URL and the row home server URL. This is not the real public address. This is, the technical domain of your server. So if you have followed the matrix tutorial number 1, it should be matrix.yourdomain.something, not just your domain. So I'm going to replace everything that's just matrix.org with matrix.chipchop.org in my case. There we go. So I have a field for the access token, so I can move it. I have saved it. Yeah, let me find my notes. There we go. I have the access token. So this is Mjolnir's access token. Oops. There we go. Within the codes, Pantalaimon. So this is what we can use to support end-to-end encryption within Mjolnir. This is not something we're going to use at the moment, so we can skip that section entirely. The data path is, so you can leave it by default. Most of the things you can leave them by default. What we are going to update is the management room. So I'm going to update it to moderation chipchop.org, which is the room I had created a little bit earlier. Log information, everything. So I can leave most of the thing by default. This, we are going to touch on that next week, or at least in the next matrix tutorial. We're going to talk a bit more about automatically redact for reasons. Let's not cover that for today. Protected rooms, I'm going to leave that empty for now. So since it's a YAML file, I need to add those square braces to say it's an array, but it's empty. Otherwise, Mjolnir is going to crash. Leave the default. Nothing much. Nothing to change here. For the words, I'm going to remove all of them because they are examples and that could actually be harmful. Health, nothing else to change for now. And for the web, nothing for now. So there is an interesting one about abuse reporting. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about that, I think, next week. Well, at least in the next tutorial, we're going to see how to get proper fancy reports in the matrix control room. At the moment, we're not going to have them. So that's it. Let's see. Docker ps. Where is my Mjolnir? It's restarting. Looks like Mjolnir might be starting. Okay. So what happens in, this window, moderation room. Yeah, important thing, I need to invite Mjolnir to the moderation room, otherwise it can't join because it's a private room, obviously. So I'm going to invite moderation at chipchop.org. There we go. It's invited. Back to the terminal. Okay. I can see that Mjolnir has started and it's been deployed. So now we can have a check. So Mjolnir status is going to tell me that Mjolnir is running. It's not protecting any room. I'm not subscribing to any policy list, and I'm not doing anything else. So I can have a look at the comments by typing Mjolnir help. I can see there is a lot of comments here. And what I would be interested in would be the kick or the ban. So I could try to say Mjolnir kick table.org. So the user that was behaving poorly from the general room, for example, just to give it a go. I'm going to find the room ID for that one. There we go. So there's a problem. I can't do that. And the problem is Mjolnir actually doesn't have any way to do it at the moment. So I need to invite moderation in the room, and then I can give it a power level. So with the power level by default, Mjolnir cannot do anything. It's like you have a security guard, but they can't actually do anything. So that's an issue. So you need to allow them to kick people out. For that, I can change the role to moderator or administrator or a custom level. By default, if you are the only one with the access to the Mjolnir account, I would advise you, for the sake of simplicity, to start with admin. We can do more complex setups where we use a custom power level to get more fine-grained permissions and make sure that the ownership of the space is not the same as the whole privileges you give to Mjolnir. So Mjolnir can always be retrograded. You can always take back its power level. At the moment this is not the case, but this is not really a problem because we are the only ones who have access to Mjolnir's access token and more generally to Mjolnir's account. So I'm going to do the same here. Moderation, invite it here and make administrator. Yes, I want to do that. I want to give away that room to Mjolnir. Moderation. So as you can see, it's a bit tedious to set up, but it's going to save us a lot of time later. And I can make it admin. All right. And I can go back to the moderation room. I'm going to make it my favorite room to separate it from the rest. And Mjolnir status. Okay, I'm still not protecting any room, but I can at least issue the Mjolnir. So the same command as above here. Mjolnir is removing Tib from general, and I can see that, well, the other Tib, not me, was removed from Mjolnir. So, but not from the other rooms, because I asked it specifically to do it for the general room. So we have deployed Mjolnir. That's pretty much it. It's fairly simple and it just works. I'm not going to expand too much into the details for this week, but next week we are going to see how to create block lists, how to subscribe to block lists, how to set up a default block list, etc. So we're going to go deeper in how to operate Mjolnir. This one was mostly about how to deploy Mjolnir. So I hope this tutorial was useful already for you. I hope you can keep your community safe, and I see you next week. See you around Matrix Live.